Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear viewers, this is the fifth and final session on the 16th topic that we began some sessions ago. And the nature of discussion in this talk would revolve around manuscript evidence regarding the introduction of vocalization and diacritics that we have been discussing in the earlier talks. If you recall, we have discussed and critically evaluated Muslim accounts in which it is shown that the vocalization phase preceded the diacritic phase, and then there came another vocalization phase in which the previous vocal signs or vowel signs, they were adapted into the signs which later on resulted in the signs that we have today. The manuscript evidence that I'm going to present before you is basically taken from a website, Islamic Awareness, and it has presented the masahif, the pictures of the earliest masahif, and I am indebted to the website, and I would like to make my acknowledgement to the website as well, because the images that I'm going to present before you have been taken by them and they have acquired them through their own means. Now, since we know that our Muslim accounts, the way we have discussed them earlier, they stand on frail grounds as far as criticism is concerned, to the best of my own humble opinion. But of course, manuscript evidence is something which is quite final when we come to such things, because introduction of vowel signs and diacritics is something, if they can be directly observed in these masahif, then of course there is no chance of any error. Previously, I have been criticizing these accounts, critically evaluating them, and have tried to show that the way they have been reported in early Muslim books, they suffer from a lot of flaws, and their historicity stands to question. And clearly they show that the diacritics phase preceded the vocalization phase preceded the diacritics phase. Now, if this is the case, then we need to understand that we must find, or we should find, evidence from the earlier masahif in which there are only red dots which represent vocalization, because we know in the earliest scheme, the red ink was used for vocalization and black ink was used for the diacritics or the ijam. So since the vocalization phase is supposed to have preceded diacritics phase, we must find earlier masahif which only have red dots, and they should not have black dots, because red dots have always preceded the black dots, the red dots signifying vocalization. Similarly, we must not have, there should be no masahif which only have black dots to mark diacritics, because we know that the red dots preceded the black dots. In other words, the diacritics phase was something which came later on. So we must not have any masahif, the earliest masahif, in which there are only black dots. Now, I'm going to show these manuscripts to you, their pictures to you. The earliest masahif, the Quranic manuscripts, are basically called Hijazi masahif, and they are, of course, Kufic also, but in general, our manuscript experts have told us that the Hijazi script has always preceded, or in general preceded, the Kufic script. So we'll take a look at most of the Hijazi manuscripts, and till date there is not a single Hijazi manuscript that has been discovered which has only red dots. So one would obviously need to know that if the scheme, the way it has been presented in our books, then why is it that we have yet to, or not discovered as yet, the earliest masahif, we have found them, but it is not that they have only red dots. On the contrary, they have black dots. And as I shall show you later on in this discussion, that this actually conclusively proves that the accounts of Muslim books which present the introduction of vowel signs and diacritics into the masahif are extremely unreliable, and they cannot be trusted. Now, let me start off with presenting my the first of these manuscript evidence, and viewers, as you can see on your screen, the first of them is from Surah Ibrahim, and verses are 19 to 44. The website Islamic Awareness has specified that the location is not known, but it belongs to the 1st century Hijrah. The script is Hijazi. No vocalization can be seen. There are no red dots, but diacritics are present sparingly in the form of dots and certain angle dashes. So as you can see that there are some folios which are being displayed before you, and these folios they go through verses, as I said, of Surah Ibrahim from 19 to 44. And as you can see, as you can move along them, you cannot find any red dots in these folios, in these images. All you can find is the sparing appearance of black dots. And as I've already said, that this has been posited and this has been presented by the Islamic Awareness website. So now I'm going to present before you the second evidence in this regard. This is called the Codex Sana DAM 01-27.1, and it belongs to the 1st century Hijrah. The script is Hijazi, and its location is Al-Maktaba Sharqiyya and Dar al-Makhtutat in Sana, which is in Yemen. It is also found at the David collection in Copenhagen. Obviously, we find the copies and other private collections as well. The verses are miscellaneous. These palimpsests have a few diacritical marks, and there are no vocalization. There's no vocalization signs or surah titles. In a recent study of this codex, Sadeghi has concluded that its scripture inferior belongs to the period of the companions of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, while its scripture superior belongs to the Usmanic tradition itself. So this can clearly be seen as one of the ancient finds. Viewers, next we move on to the third example in this category, the third manuscript. And this third has actually no number as is specified by the Islamic Awareness website. There is no number specified. The verse is Surah Anam, and verses are 5 to 20. It belongs to the 1st century Hijrah. The script again is Hijazi, and its location is Maktabatul Jami al-Kabir in Sana, which is also in Yemen. And you can see that diacritics are present. In this regard, viewers, the next example that I'm going to present before you, which is the fourth example, this actually belongs to Surah Mudassir, and side A is Surah Mudassir, which actually consists of verses 1 to 27, and then side B is also Surah Mudassir, but this time we have verses 34 to 56. The side B's 2004 fragment contains Surah Hud verses 73 to 95, and these are of 1st century Hijrah, and the location is a private collection in London, and the script is Kufic. Consonants are sparsely differentiated, as you can clearly see from these images. Viewers, next we move on to the fifth manuscript evidence in this regard, and this is called the Arab 328A. And there are miscellaneous verses, all belong to the 1st century Hijrah again. The script is Hijazi, and the location is Bibliothèque Nationale, Paris, and the Bibliotheca Apostolica in Vaticana, the Vatican City, and also in Nasir David Khalili Collection of Islamic Art, London. And there are occasional diacritical marks, or in fact diacritical strokes, and there is no vocalization, and it is said that it belongs to the reading of Abdullah ibn Amir. Next, viewers, we move on to the sixth example in this regard, and according to the Islamic Awareness website, the manuscript is called OR.2165. Again, we have miscellaneous verses. It belongs to the 1st century Hijrah. The script is Hijazi, and it is studied by Intisar Rab and reassigned the reading of hymns. And its location is the British Library in London in UK, and the consonants are frequently differentiated by dashes. So we can see that instead of dots we have dashes which differentiate similar words. This is the sixth example that I have presented before you. Now, viewers, we move on to the seventh example in this regard, and the seventh example is also, as I said, being displayed before you and courtesy of the Islamic Awareness website. It is called the LNS 19CA with AB as the superscript. So this is from verse 89 of Surah Maida to verse 12 of Surah Anam, and it also belongs to the 1st century Hijrah. The script is Hijazi. The location is Darul Asar al-Islamiyya in Kuwait. This manuscript bears a striking resemblance to the British Museum MSOR 2165 already referred to, and the consonants are frequently differentiated by dashes instead of dots. Now, as far as the eighth example, viewers, is concerned, as you can see, it is also being displayed before you. It is called 1611-MKH235, and we have Surah Maida verses 7 to 12. It belongs to the 1st century Hijrah. The script is early Kufic, and the location is Bayt al-Quran, Manama, Bahrain, and we can see that diacritics are present. And then viewers, we have the 9th of these manuscripts, or the 9th example in this case, which is the MS Qaf 47. We have miscellaneous verses. It belongs to the 1st century Hijrah. The script is Hijazi, and the location is Staatsbibliothek zu Berlin in Germany, and Darul Kutub al-Misriya in Cairo. The consonant here are also differentiated by dashes. So it seems that in those times, besides dots, we also had dashes to serve a similar purpose. Next, viewers, we have the example of, or we have the 10th manuscript example in this regard, and this belongs to, and this actually is labeled as QUR-1-TSR, and it has Surah Maida verses 18 to 29. It belongs to the 1st century Hijrah. Again, the script is Hijazi. The location is the Tariq Rajab Museum in Kuwait. And again, here you can see that the consonants are frequently differentiated by dashes. As far as the 11th example is concerned, viewers, this is the Codex Sana DAM 01-25.1. It has miscellaneous verses. It belongs to the 1st century Hijrah. The script again is Hijazi. Its location is Darul Makhtutat, Sana'a, Yemen. There are a few diacritical marks. If you can deliberate on the screen before you, if you can concentrate, you'll find there are a few diacritical marks present. So until now, you can see clearly that the pattern that is emerging in the earliest manuscripts, all of them obviously which are Hijazi, some of them, very few of them Kufic till now, which are the earliest masahif, we find dots, black dots, which actually are part of the letters themselves. We do not have that red dotting scheme of Abul Aswad. Otherwise, of course, we would have corroborated, or we could have established the opposite in this regard. Viewers, as far as the 12th example is concerned, you can see that it is also being displayed before you, and it is called the DAM 01-29.1. Now, it has miscellaneous verses. It also belongs to the 1st century Hijrah. Again, the script here is Hijazi. The location is Darul Makhtutat, Sana in Yemen, and you can see that there are a few diacritical marks. And in this regard, now we move on to the 13th manuscript evidence in this regard, and as you can see that it is being displayed before you. The 13th manuscript evidence actually is called M1572. Now, it has miscellaneous verses. It also belongs to the 1st century Hijrah. Again, the script is Hijazi, and as I have pointed out earlier also, that the Hijazi Qur'ans have preceded the Kufic Qur'ans, and the orthography experts and the experts of Quranic manuscripts tell us that the Hijazi Qur'ans are the earliest ones. So, viewers, what you have till now before you, the examples that I have set out before you, most of them are Hijazi Qur'ans, and all of them, instead of showing any red dotted scheme, all of them show that they are black dots, which of course represent diacritics. So I was talking about the 13th evidence in this regard, and this belongs to M1572. It actually is labeled as M.1572. It has miscellaneous verses. It belongs to the 1st century Hijrah. The script is Hijazi, and the location is the University of Birmingham, and this is the Birmingham in UK. The consonants here are also differentiated by dashes, and the musaf is partly vocalized with red dots by perhaps a later hand. So this can clearly be seen that there are black dots or black dashes which signify the consonants or differentiate the consonants, and there are partially red dots as well. And this is also something which is quite natural, that we would have found, we would have definitely found masahif which have the red dotted scheme and the black dotted scheme at the same time. But this is because they do not in any way hinder, or they do not in any way negate the premise that has already been established earlier, and that is that we have actually seen that the black dotted in the red dot scheme, attributed to Abul Aswad as introduction of vocalization, and the black dots which are regarded as diacritics. So our own common sense would say, or our own natural interpretation would say, that perhaps these black dots should have been inserted earlier, because they are part of the letters themselves, and it is very strange that first the vocalization was made and then those black dots which differentiate consonants were introduced. So that was the theory that we had negated, and we again in this manuscript study are finding a corroboration of our negation, and on the contrary, we have yet to find any earliest musaf which just has red dots. And here in the particular example that I have set before you, we have a clear example in which the red and black dots are present. But again is something which does not negate the premise, because it does. We do not have any musaf so far as yet which contains only red dots. So viewers, this is as far as the 13th example, or the 13th manuscript example is concerned. Let me now move on to the 14th example in this regard, and it bears no number as per the Islamic Awareness website. It belongs to the 1st century Hijrah. The script is Hijazi. The location is not known, and we can find that there are diacritical marks where present. They consist actually of oval dots or angular dashes. And again, since the earliest of these are the Hijazi manuscripts, and this in fact is a Hijazi manuscript, so we can clearly see that still we have no sign of any musaf which has only red dots. Viewers, the 15th example in this case is of DAM 01-28.1. It has miscellaneous verses. It is said that it belongs to the first or early second Hijrah. The script is again Hijazi. The location is Darul Makhtutat in Yemen, and you can see that there are very frequent diacritical marks in the image which is being displayed before you. Now viewers, as far as the 16th example in this regard is concerned, it is labeled as the Codex Sana DAM 01-18.3, and it has Surah Anfal verses 2 to 11 and then verses 41 to 46. It belongs to the 1st, 2nd century Hijrah. The script is Hijazi. The location is Darul Makhtutat, Sana, Yemen, and there are few diacritical marks. Now, in this regard, the 17th example, viewers, is that of the Codex of Sana DAM 01-30.1. It has miscellaneous verses. 2nd century Hijrah is the time which is assigned to it. The script is Hijazi, and the location is Darul Makhtutat, Sana, Yemen. And you can see that there are a few diacritical marks which are present. So this is as far as the 17th example, the 17th evidence is concerned. Moving on, viewers, to the 18th example in this regard. This has been labeled by the website, the Islamic Awareness website, as Codex Sana DAM 01-29.2. Now, this has miscellaneous verses. It belongs to the 2nd century Hijrah. Now, this time the script is Kufic. It is not Hijazi. The location is Darul Makhtutat, Sana, Yemen, and we can see that diacritical marks are sparsely distributed, as you can see on your screen. This was as far as the 18th example is concerned. So, viewers, these are the 18 examples that I have presented before you, in which you can clearly see the earliest Qurans do not have any red dots solely, because had it been the case, had it been the fact that our accounts would have been correct, then we should have found earlier masahif which only have red dots, because we know that the red dot phase or the vocalization phase preceded the diacritic phase. So we should have some masahif at least which only depict the first phase, because the diacritics were introduced earlier. On the contrary, we find that the earliest masahif have the reverse. They have the diacritics. We have the masahif which only have the black dots, which clearly tells us that Muslim accounts, the way they have been mentioned and the way I have critically evaluated them, they do not hold water, they do not hold any ground, and they the way they have been presented, they cannot be accepted. May I also point out that it may be of further interest to note that Giorgio Levi della Vida has published one of the earliest partial Quranic masahif on parchment. It belongs to the 1st century and is found in the Vatican Library. It begins with the 4th verse of Surah Hud, and you can see that diacritical parts are apparent, although we do not have an image here being displayed. But for those who want to look it up, can see Salahuddin Munajjar's book Tariqat al-Arabi, and he has given a picture of that. So that is one of the earliest masahif, which have the earliest partial masahif, and it only has black dots or diacritical dots. So viewers, now I am in a position to finally conclude this whole comprehensive discussion regarding the introduction of vocalization signs and diacritics. So it can clearly be seen that the way our Muslim accounts say that diacritic phase succeeded the vocalization phase, not only the way these accounts have been presented, the historical criticism tools tell us that they are not firmly grounded, but we have also seen manuscript evidence being presented before you, which tells us the contrary, which tells us clearly, on the other hand, that the diacritics phase preceded the vocalization phase. So it was not the vocalization phase which was introduced first, but diacritics which was introduced first, and later on came the vocalization. And if you recall, also in my first episode of this lecture, I had also referred to the fact that Jirji Zaidan, in his book Tarikh Tamadul al-Islami, had pointed out that he had seen a dotted mushaf in Dar al-Kutub al-Misriya, which is according to Abu Aswad's dotting scheme. So again, since he has not specified if diacritics were also present in them in the form of ejam, again, this does not negate our theory, because if he had seen a mushaf which was dotted with red dots, according to Abu Aswad's scheme, it could clearly be a mushaf in which the red dots were introduced after the black dots had already been introduced earlier on. So that too would not negate what we have already posited or perhaps deduced. So the second thing, viewers, which is important now is that we, in the light of this discussion, we should not ascribe these introduction of vocal signs to the personalities of Abu Aswad or Yahya ibn Ya'mar or Asim, Nasr ibn Asim or Hassan Basri, who have alleged to have taken part in the introduction of diacritics and vocalization. So we can clearly see that as far as these personalities are concerned, the way they are presented in history, the way our records speak of them, it is highly, highly improbable that they had any role in this regard, and the accounts which mention them are full of details which are contradictory, which are not firmly grounded and established in history. Now, what can be firmly said, in my opinion, is that as far as the diacritics are concerned, the dot in which we have ejam, which separates similar letters, then it is with reasonable surety we can say that they were actually invented at the time that the letters were invented. Diacritics or the ejam are not something, or not some piece of invention that was done by later people to distinguish between similar letters. Actually, what happened is that in fact, they were certainly invented at the time of the Arabic alphabet. The only thing perhaps that can be said is that they were sparingly used at times, because when a person clearly knows or distinguishes ra and za, when he knows a reader will not make a mistake, they were used sparingly. But positing the fact that they were invented by later people like Nasr ibn Asim, this is absolutely wrong. These dots were already present at the time the letters were actually originated, and we have seen manuscript evidence also in this regard by Beatrice Grundler, by Ghaban, and by other authorities which have shown that these letters were found in writings. These dots were found in writings which were much earlier to the period of Nasr ibn Asim and Yahya ibn Ya'mar. Now, viewers, as far as vocalization is concerned, now it seems to me that it is quite plausible that this is something which the Arabs perhaps had borrowed from the Syrians or from the Syriac tradition, to which they were also exposed. Now, Verstir, in his book Arabic Grammar and Quranic Exegesis in Early Islam, has also pointed out that there is a striking correlation between the Arabic signs of fath and kasra and zamma with the Syriac signs of pitaha, which means opening, hibasa, which means pushing, and isasa, which means contraction. So in all probability, the Syriac signs were also represented by sublinear and supralinear dots. And this is also evident from the representation of two other closely related terms, which is the ziqafa, which means the raising of the tongue, and ribasa, which means the lowering of the tongue, and they are represented by a supralinear dot and a sublinear dot, respectively. So we can clearly see that there is some similarity in this regard, which actually tells us that perhaps this was borrowed from the Syriac tradition. Now, we can also clearly see that in this regard, the third vocalization phase, which is attributed to Khalil ibn Ahmad al-Farahidi, that too does not stand on firm historical grounds. So my take on this would be, my final deduction would be that diacritics were present. They were invented with the letters, although they were sparingly used. They are found in the earliest writings, and even as we have seen by that a PhD dissertation by Sara Zubair Mirza tells us that one of the letters of the Prophet addressed to Munzir ibn Sawa, the governor of Bahrain, has two instances of dots appearing on the letter Na. So they were already there. And as far as the vocalization is concerned, we cannot trace back any personality who would have introduced the Syriac tradition in the manuscripts. But obviously, because of the similarity, there was someone who had introduced this without knowing which that person is. But such was his scheme that it actually found currency and vogue amongst people, because they thought it was very useful. And as far as the development of those dots and dashes, dots into signs, vocalization signs that we have today is concerned, which is in our own history books attributed to Khalil ibn Ahmad al-Farahidi, as I said, that too stands on frail grounds, and that cannot be exactly corroborated. So all in all, viewers, if I sum up my own findings, I will say that Muslim accounts in this matter, they are not only against historical criticism. Historical criticism has proven that the way they have been reported are extremely weak, but very firm evidence in this regard is the manuscript evidence, which on the contrary tells us that diacritic phase preceded the vocalization phase. The diacritics were already present, and the vocalization phase came later actually. And this is because the earliest masahif we find, they consist of the black dots only. We have yet to find any early musaf which only contains red dots, because if our own accounts are to be relied upon, then as I said, we should have found earliest masahif which only consists of the red dotted scheme of Abul Aswad, but this is not the case. So my final conclusion is that these Muslim accounts cannot be trusted and cannot be relied upon, and the simple matter is that the diacritic phase preceded the vocalization phase, and this is also corroborated by the earliest Hijazi manuscripts. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين والمسلمات.